I've been noticing a disconnect when it comes to trucking. Let's talk about it. I was out tonight playing with these lights and all that and trying to get this working. I'm not screwing with those for a while because, well, yeah. But I was just sitting here watching the Gilmore Girls because, well, that's what I do. And I got thinking about the job, about how fluid trucking really is. I talk about this, about basic math, trucker math, just really understanding your job, understanding the job. And I'm kind of starting to figure that there's this disconnect. And I think it's there by design. I'll explain. When we start getting, we get your first job, the reason I'm saying there's a disconnect is because, well, your first job, we all are, you just dumb. I don't care if you've been doing this or your dad's been doing this or your uncle's been doing this. Just like that, it's just dumb. Let's see, how do we make this? So, oh shit. You just don't quite get what you're doing, and you sit there and make this work. You got a trigger wire here. Guess this is about all I can get it to do here. Yep. Until there's some practical application with what you're doing, and a little bit of heartbreak and a little bit of failure, it doesn't matter what you've been through. It doesn't matter that your dad did this or your uncle did this. You need some first-hand knowledge. So about your first year, year and a half, there's a complete disconnect. You're just learning the ropes. And I'm not going to lie. If you were around it and your dad and uncle and all that, I'm not going to discount that because you did have some knowledge of it. That's my ideas. But furthermore, beyond that, it starts getting a little interesting. And year two is kind of when you start really finding your groove into it, between year 2 and 3. But something very interesting happens around year 5. Around year 5, you're at the point where, what am I looking for? I still ain't got this working yet. I'm not sure if I'm going to bring this with me. This, maybe I ought to. Well, yeah, maybe I ought to bring it with me. That way, I can get it fixed if I'm in a good spot to get it looked at. Around year 5, you start getting to the point where you're asking yourself some real questions. And the main question is this something I want to do for the rest of my life? Because year 5 is a breaking point. So you have to either get all the way into it or all the way out of it. You've just got to get invested in it. Because when you're like me, you know, at 50, wondering where you went wrong, well, you don't have a whole lot of options. And I got all these lights out of a security vehicle, I think. You don't have a whole lot of options here. So what you have to start doing... Oof. All right. Crisis averted there. What you have to start doing is really deciding and doing some real soul searching. Is this something I want to do for the rest of my life? And if the answer is no, you better hustle, because I'll tell you this, after year number 5, the clock is winding out. Now, I'm not going to say that as you get older, there's not going to be more options. that are going to pop up. You will have options. There are things, I mean, even at my age, I still get some options and things that pop up. But I like where I'm at. Oh, well, this makes it easy. I have a red and green, or a red and black, and a control panel. What I'm doing right now is I'm trying to figure out what lighting combo I want for the car for Power Tour. I'm really planning on doing it again this year. But you got to figure out what you're doing. And that brings on a lot of things. And this is where a lot of guys get in trouble. Because year 5, you start looking at some good money potential. Now, I talk about leasing all the time. I'm not going to go off on a tangent on that. When I find that lease contract I got a couple of them here, I'll read it, and then you'll understand how you guys are getting screwed. But all that aside, you have to start figuring out. Now, I'll tell you this. There ain't hardly nobody that's going to want to lease you a truck with 5 years under your belt because, well, they understand you're smarter than that now. I mean, look around. There's not a whole lot of people leasing trucks to people with 5 and 6 years in. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So, but you start making a little money, you start figuring it out. So, now, this is where the fluid comes in. Alright, so flip that on. That's upside down. Power. And warning. Oh! Fast and slow, fast and that's a fast and slow button. Oh, okay. Well, that ought to be fun. Green. Up. All right. Stop. This is definitely a contender. What ends up happening is that 5 years, you start getting these little peeks behind the veil. Not too much. And it all depends on where you work. I got lucky when to come in on an era before everything got internet based and before when we were still talking and there was still real open doors and stuff like that. My last job, they claimed to have an open door policy. The front door was open, but I had no access to anybody. It ended up being not a very great place to work after 9 years. But what ends up happening is you start figuring things out. You start making money. And then you really have to start figuring out which way your future is going to take you. And this is kind of where it starts getting fun. Because you start realizing that the only limits you have are the ones that are imposed on you by your current employer. And then you got some interesting decisions to make. I'll be the first one to tell you, if you work for an employer who just doesn't change with the times, who doesn't progress, who wants to grow but won't change what they're doing because they've been doing it this way for, fill in the blank amount of years, you're not going to grow. You're not going to make any more money. Eventually what's going to happen is they're going to start dying. Companies like that soldier on for 15 or 20 years or even less than that. Basically, they make it through one generation and they die. Why did they die? Because they didn't grow. They didn't progress. And it's a hard thing to do. But you being an employee of that company, you're going to hit the ceiling rather quickly. So if your company's not willing to change, chances are you're going to be in a bad predicament in 3 to 5. Now, I do know a lot of guys that get comfortable because either the job's easy or it's near the house or it's convenient or something of that nature. But, I mean, if that's all you're worried about, are you really living at all? I mean, you've topped out. That's all you're ever going to make. And that brings me up to something that has bothered me for a long time about that statement. One of the things that always irritates me about a lot of these places you go to work, all right, no fire, is they're like all the miles you can run. Okay, that's red and yellow. Goody. All the miles you can run, all the miles you can run, blah, blah, this, blah, blah, that, all the miles, all the miles. Here's the problem with that statement. That's kind of freaky. Is that they're the ones dispatching you. And even at my company, that's a problem. Why is that? Well, it's a problem because you only get the miles they give you. And, oh, well, that'll work. You only get the miles they give you. I mean, when people talk about all the miles you can run, well, yeah, all the miles you can run. But you remember a couple videos I talked about topping out? And I said I was watching a couple of other YouTubers talking about this, about how they're hitting a wall. You're hitting a wall. Doesn't matter what they say. If you're only getting this amount, if you're only getting 23 to 25 a week, it doesn't matter what they say. All the miles you can run? No, you've just topped out. And that's what you're doing. So that's something else you have to take into effect or into account. A lot of these local jobs, they just flat rate you. And like I said, if you're happy about that, hey, whatever. But I know everybody wants to make more money. There's nothing wrong with that. Now for power tour, I haven't decided whether I'm going to put these in or I'm going to put that clear one on top. I'm leaning towards everything on the inside of the car. I had so much fun the last time with the lights, and the kids loved it so much that I think we're going to do it again. So, yeah. So at 5 years, you've got to figure out, is this where you want to be? Because time is a ticking away, and if you want to make this your career, because at 5 years you're kind of getting into it, you've got to decide whether this is what you want. It's a hard call. It really is. Is it what you want? For a lot of guys, it is not. Most of these guys are washing out after a year and a half. They don't even hardly get their feet wet. Like I had a lot of guys when I was training freak out. Couldn't handle being away from home and whatnot. Saw a lot of talent leave. I had one guy, he had 3 jobs in 3 months. I don't know why they hired him. Guess said he'd had to go home for a family emergency once and this and that or something else. And I found out later it's because just the thought of him being on his own by himself terrified the living snot out of him. You okay? Well, you got one not working. Groovy. It just terrified the crap out of him. And so every time it came close, he wanted to be a truck driver. He wasn't bad, but it would just terrify him, and he would find a reason to go. And he did. Whoops. All right. See what happens here. You have a control wire you start putting different wires together, you can make these things do all sorts of different things. Just all about what you want to do. Ooh, not that. Alright. That's what I want to do. Groovy. The future is really exciting with things, and there's so many different apps out there that can really help further your business. Technology is not the enemy. How you use the technology is going to dictate a lot of things. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times when I actually can do everything on email and I can make phone calls. But trust me when I tell you, there are some things you just need to make a personal appearance at. Like when I was looking for this truck, the guy could tell me anything on the phone. But I'll tell you what, you pop in his office, you drive and pop in his office, you're going to see who you're dealing with. You need to put a face to it. And that's not a bad thing. Technology doesn't have to be the enemy. I talk about apps. You know, a lot of these apps out here are phenomenal. I got apps for my camera. I got apps for the fuel. These fuel, like at the Loves, these damn pumps, the card readers are so screwed up half the time or broken that I start most of the fuel maybe once a month. I have to go in, if that. Start it all on the phone through the app. And if the card reader's broken or the keypad's broken, it doesn't matter. I can force it through with the app, and I don't have to waste any time. Technology's not the enemy. How you choose to embrace technology or how you use technology, that's kind of, use it to your advantage. That's why it's there. Not everything's a big conspiracy. Sometimes these apps are just what they are. They're a help. Now, I've been talking about doing a video about this for a while, the driver's aids. Driver's aids are kind of starting to be a problem. They're making drivers lazy. They're taking control away from the drivers, automatic braking, adaptive cruise. They're really slowing the highways down, and it's frustrating a lot of drivers. Especially these four-wheelers out there. When you see one just keep speeding up and suddenly come to a slowdown, look at the car in front of them. You'll see they're about 5 to 7 car lengths in front of them, like clockwork. This is where technology's kind of failed us. These are driver's aids. These are not meant to drive the truck, but guys are sure acting like they are. Using the adaptive cruise, they're just not paying attention to what they're doing. And I see more and more guys these days going down the road, they're watching movies going down the road, they're just getting bored. And I'm not gonna lie, I've been guilty of it too, not watching movies, but I'll be listening to something and I'll just look down, and yeah, that's something I've really been working on trying to stop. If I'm going to be out here on YouTube, I got to be setting an example, and doing stuff like that is not setting a good example. So you got to pick and choose your technology, but for a lot of it, I think it's a real positive. We got to embrace the future because it's here whether we like it or not. Trucking is fluid. Time waits for no man, and I'll tell you right now, if you don't move with it, you're going to get left behind. I'm not going to lie, I was about 10 or 12 years into this before I really started figuring out how to be truly efficient. And the reason it took so long was because the jobs I had wouldn't allow it. And my last job, I kind of had to start forcing it on them. And that's when the divide started growing between me and that job. Spent 9 years there. And about the last 3 were awful. And as you start figuring out your job and you start figuring out how to make it more efficient, and you start figuring out, and they're not telling you nothing and they're hiding things from you, and you're sitting, You start getting frustrated, well, you start pushing. And you start pushing back. You start trying to force issues that you shouldn't have to force because, well, all you want to do is make a living out here. 2,100 miles a week is not making a living. When I was working for that outlaw company, I was getting 2,100 miles in the first 2.5 days. Yeah, don't miss that. But you really have to just catch your surroundings. Like I said, trucking being fluid, you have to know you have to know your limits. You absolutely have to know your limits. Because that was one of the things that I started realizing there towards the end of my last job. And part of why I became an owner-operator was to avoid a lot of the BS that was coming down the pike. They were doing a lot of stupid things to company trucks, to company drivers, you know. And I didn't want nothing to do with it. And the way out of it was to buy a truck. And it was a way out, all right. Eventually, I found my way out of that job. I like to say that nobody stays stupid forever, and that's what a lot of these companies try to make sure of. Now, I say that nobody stays stupid forever, but we all know those guys. There's a few people, I'm sure, that we'll just leave that there. But when you start figuring things out and you start asking questions, that's when they're done with you. I don't want you guys out there to be done like I was done. When you're done, I want you being done to be on your own terms. That's the best way. Plan your own future. Don't get me wrong. It's gonna be tough, but you guys can make it through. So if I can offer any advice or I can offer any encouragement, stay the course. Have a plan, have a projection, and be willing to change with the times. It's your only way. If you want to make it in this business and you want to make money in this business, you have to be willing to change. And the biggest changes I've seen in this business have come in the last 10 years. That's where some of these younger kids have an advantage over me because they came in when everything was in flux. And they're okay with the change. They're playing with the technology. They were never on paper. They have always had cell phones and Qualcomms. So they're used to the technology and things flow better for them. That's something I had to learn. But I'll tell you what, I learned it quick because I knew I had to. But if you want to make money and you want to grow in this business, you got to be willing to change. You got to be willing to flow, and you've got to be willing to do the work. And that is where I'm going to leave you, because I'll tell you right now, too many guys out here want the paycheck. They don't want the work. I spend a lot of time home. I'm not going to lie. But I forfeit a lot of pay too. I could probably make another 30 to 50 grand a year if I would spend more time out there. But you know what? I'm at a point now to where I'm kind of comfortable with my job. And maybe that's my fault. Maybe that's my problem. Maybe I'm not willing to change yet. See? But I'm also okay with losing that because I get to make these videos. I get to do things like Power Tour now. I could never do that 10 years ago. I get to, do engine swaps on my cars. I get to play with the police cars. I get to go on vacations now that aren't... I don't have to ask permission to go on vacation. I don't get 2 weeks of vacation after 5 years. If I want to take a month off, I take a month off. But just remember this. This did not happen overnight. It took 15 to 17 years to get where I'm at. And if you're willing to put in the time, and you're willing to change with the times, and you're willing to be in a little bit of flux, and sometimes if you're willing to do the runs you don't want to do, I do a lot of things I don't like doing. And I'm going to have a discussion tomorrow about that, because, well, that's just what it takes sometimes. But I tell you this, the reward is worth it. And isn't that what we want? Better pay? I'm telling you right now, I'm making more money than I ever have, and I'm getting more time off than I ever have. And it took time. Like I said, I drove my first truck in 96. So that's where we're at. I just want you guys to be well, man. This job doesn't have to suck. But like I said, 1 year, 2 years, and 5 years. And by year 5, have a plan. Just something that was on my mind, guys. So I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. And see you next video.